I think I'm the only speaker today, or the panelist today, that perhaps gets involved in more disputes than actually project delivery, based on my recent career. So part of my experience will be to share some projects where it involves contractor financing that did not go very well, particularly for the contractor. But I think to start off with on EPCF, I think certainly in Malaysia, the biggest EPCF project being proposed is the Kuala Lumpur to Singapore high-speed rail, 350 kilometers railway system for trains up to 170 kilometers per hour, so that the distance can be traversed in something like 90 minutes. All fantastic stuff. Rumored to be priced at around something like between 21 to 25 billion US dollars. On and off project, first agreed between Malaysia and Singapore back in 2013. Change in government in 2018 in Malaysia, shelved. Change in government again in 2020. By 2021, the new government decided to terminate the agreement with Singapore. New government again in 2023, revived. Currently in bidding, 3 bidders left. 2 Malaysian-led consortium, 1 China consortium. China consortium being led by China Railways, obviously. From speaking to people that are working on the bids, apparently the government requires a fully privately funded by contractor model. Apparently none of the bids compliant. Most bidders are willing to put up to something like a quarter. The rest to be funded by the government, either through some form of sovereign guarantee, including the Chinese bid. So I think the part of the concern is that whether a project of this nature, with the relatively small population between the 2 countries, will actually generate a profit for the funder. So EPCF models are not magic bullets. The money man will always look at it and see whether it is sensible, particularly with the very high levels of national debt in Malaysia. So it currently might not be that attractive for funders to come in to fund the entire construction costs without any guarantees from the government to back things up if things don't go well. So I think that's certainly one concern when you're talking about really major EPCF type projects. But on a smaller scale, I think I think the first speaker actually spoke a lot about this practice of deferred payment schemes being applied. I first came across a project, and actually it's not an EPC project, it's just box standard FIDIC Red Book 99. It's not particularly complicated as well. It's a project in Myanmar in Yangon. The project is a very high end for at that time for Yangon, a very high end condominium project, 2 tower blocks, 30 stories. The developer is obviously locally based in Myanmar. The contractor negotiated for, is a mainland Chinese contractor, negotiated for the job. The contractor has a fairly big operation based out of Singapore. So the contractor actually bought the entire consultant team for the project to Yangon for this, the architect, the engineer, as well as the quantity surveyor. So the arrangement is such that construction contract-wise is block standard 1999 Red Book, but there's a separate agreement where the deferred payment scheme is set up such that for every monthly certification for payment, the employer has to only pay 60%, with 40% deferred until the taking over certificate is issued. All right. And then out of the 40% deferred, half is payment by cash upon the taking over certificate. The other half is payment in kind. Now, in respect of payment in kind, the contractor is to procure to the value of that portion of the units that actually he's constructing himself. So this job I think was middle of 2015, and for people that might have some idea of what happened in Myanmar, in about middle of 2016, the local government in Yangon passed a new law controlling the construction of condominiums. And the enforcement was immediate. For some reason, somebody decided it was a good idea to not have a period of working towards the new regulations, but the enforcement was immediate. Some 200 projects in Yangon was suspended by an official order by the government, including this particular project. At that time, construction was about, I would say, 50%. There was, at the time also, there was no immediate solution as how these new regulations can be met by the design, because the construction has been ongoing for some time. And it ended up the employer deciding to terminate the contract. And from that deferred payment arrangement, the contractor is supposed to get paid immediately upon termination of contract. But obviously, the employer is now facing a major loss because his project is non-compliant with local regulations for condo, and he was not going to see any return. Defaulted, and the matter was in arbitration for some time, and eventually the employer went belly up, went bankrupt, arising from the lawsuit. So the contractor have lost a lot of money. So something like this is a fairly high risk venture for contractors going in, particularly into countries where legislation might not be that mature, and changes of legislation could have very drastic results in terms of whether the scheme will work. Incidentally, in 2015, that was the first time I've seen this type of terms, but since then, I've seen a number of projects. For example, in Malaysia as well, that's got this type of deferred payment scheme being offered by very big China contractors. A couple of them in Malaysia didn't go that well, including one that's a very high-end development, whom the developer couldn't really sell these very high-end units and ended up defaulting in even paying the 60%, which again ended up in the termination of contract, arbitration court cases that was since 2020 and is still ongoing today. So I think what I'm trying to perhaps highlight is that the risk involving contractor financing for the contractor themselves, as opposed for the employer, there ought to be a bit more scrutiny, perhaps as well as regulation, in order to not having too many bad projects and incomplete projects, and leading to major losses for both parties in some instances.